Imagine a story so bad that it has a Reddit full of dedicated haters. Imagine a story so bad that the second it's mentioned, people go, bro, it's enough, bro. Straight up, let's just get out of the way. From the first scene, it's actually fine. You know, it's Joel recapping Last of Us 1 to Tommy, but the scene afterwards absolutely floored me. See, storytelling in gaming is very much still in its infancy, and people have criticized The Last of Us for basically mimicking film and TV. And I think it's completely reasonable to doubt that the quality of something is actually exceptional when most of the praise comes from comparing it to its not so exceptional medium. It's been a long time since I've played a Last of Us game, and since then I've watched a lot of great film and TV. So imagine my surprise when I found that Last of Us 2 had some of the highest quality writing I've ever seen. The premise in the scene is that for the first time, both Joel and Ellie are no longer operating at the edge of survival. They're comfortable, and Joel, after recounting traumatic events, feels it right to let Ellie know how much she means to him. But the problem is that most humans don't know how to express themselves. Throughout the scene, Joel is putting stuff out there and trying to open up with shaky confidence, and you can feel the awkwardness, and Ellie too. Both of them aren't used to feeling exposed, but Joel continues to push past it because it's important to him. This storm of barriers and emotions is so finely tuned that I had a big ass smile on my face while watching it. And not because this is peak, bro, this is so peak, bro, but because I felt the love and awkwardness. It was real. In the first game, they had the bunny, right? But here, dude, the scene, it's so cute, bro. Now, in the jungle that is Last of Us 2 discourse, there's a lot of extremes, but there are also some people like Ranton and this guy who, in order to describe their mixed opinions on the story, use the terms micro and macro writing. And that The Last of Us 2 has really good micro writing in how the characters talk and express themselves, while the macro writing might be flawed in how the story works as a whole. I am going to dive into the macro because that's where most people's problems originate from. But the reason for that is because people don't even give a shit about the micro side ever. Take the best anime of all time. Sparkly top 5, Attack on Titan. I would definitely say one of the best complexity arcs, peak rowboating, tires fall bro ass characters, Eren Yeager. But the finale, dude, listen.
I thought this show was a once-in-a-generation masterpiece of writing, on par with Vinland Saga and Berserk. Continuing with the theme of character assassination, there's another plot twist, and it only gets worse. Eren and Armin both support genocide. I could stop the video right here. The writing is so terrible, I don't think I should have to justify why it's bad.
Yo, we got excess mango. Bro. Alright, so Eren Yeager, what he says, it doesn't make any sense. So that's bad writing, bro. That's really bad, bro.
I want to say that I'm happy for people who like this finale, but I can't logically understand how you would think that this is good writing.
Wait, the fuck? We're talking about anime, and you're over here complaining about the dialogue?
All the foreshadowing was wrong, and Eren wants to make love to his sister.
Shit, ass, class, or pass. People only care if characters do things that make sense to them, which limits their taste to just their personal surface level interpretations. I guarantee you Attack on Titan is just as well written as any other beloved anime, but because a character made a controversial decision, now it's trash. All you fucks look for is consistency. But if you don't care, you know, whatever floats your boat, okay? You don't care. But it also means you're blind to 99% of the time and effort that goes into making characters feel alive. How can you claim bad writing if to you Last of Us dialogue is the same as bot shit? To me, nothing about a story means anything if it's clear no effort went into building it up step by step. It's crazy to me that people hate The Last of Us 2 the way they do, because what else really set The Last of Us 1 apart other than the moment-to-moment writing? Dude, it's a story about father, bro. I mean, sure, the overall purpose of the story is what defines it, but the micro is where you live. It's what you're seeing in each individual moment, and if that doesn't work, everything falls apart. And to keep that level of micro penis quality in the second game, I mean, you might not like the general events of the story, but at least Ellie is still Ellie, and Joel is still Joel. In a world where franchises are just plagued with inconsistent writing quality, you just have to thank the man you all throw away, the man who literally wrote the first game, Neil Druckmann. The conversations in this game feel so effortlessly natural.
Got stragglers.
How many?
Just a handful.
Obviously, you gotta give credit to the acting, the animation, and I mean, it's a culmination of a lot of high-level talents. Something else too, you know a writer's actually talented when they know how to write teenagers. Like seriously, the most repelling shit ever is bad teenager writing. I really wish you would stop that. There is variance, obviously, but the peaks of Last of Us 2's naturalism are just incredible. The macro side is where people have their problems, but know that when it comes to writing, the micro side is infinitely more important. Anybody could come up with the story. The hard part is actually writing it. But failing on the macro side can still be detrimental, so let's take a look. Let's start with the big one, Joel. It's clear that the anger surrounding this game originates from the fact that Joel dies. Or more specifically, that this game is about the death of Joel. People are mad for not getting the story that they wanted, just as they would get mad about not seeing a character in an anime make their preferred decision. This is where I want to bring up a YouTuber who I've learned terminology from. Before, I was saying upfront dialogue, and now I say subtext in a story context because of a closer look. A man with a lot of critiques for The Last of Us 2, just like a Redditor, except he actually has writing knowledge.
Simply put, at an unforgivable amount of points in this story, characters don't feel like people, they feel more like puppets at the whims of the writer, and make decisions inconsistent with either their character or basic common sense because the plot demands for that thing to happen. And when Joel, a veteran survivor, outnumbered 7-2 by complete strangers, doesn't stand in a tactically advantageous spot. Also, on top of that, he says his name out loud when he knows that a lot of people in this world are outgunning for him. It's entirely out of character.
So most complaints about Joel's death on an objective consistency side are that, oh, Joel is a survivor, man, how could he ever let his guard down? Or actually here it's, how could he forget how to survive for no reason? That's so bad, dude.
Joel spent 4 years living in the safety of Jackson. He would have therefore forgotten his survival instincts after not needing to rely on them for so long. Unfortunately, that's not how storytelling works. If that were the angle Druckmann were going for, in order to do that right, he'd need to add in more foreshadowing that this is the case. He would need to show that Joel is rusty before this moment. Perhaps he makes a rookie mistake earlier in the game, and then Tommy comments about how he's losing his touch. Unfortunately, they didn't add in any foreshadowing that Joel was losing his survival instincts, so this moment comes across as lazy writing.
So here I am, now in the opposite position that I'm used to, because I'm usually the one making points about verisimilitude and a writer's craft. Except I'm usually talking about cartoons for kids, not something as intricate as The Last of Us 2. It's completely ridiculous to try and pick apart this story in such a black and white way where it's, no, Joel is out of character, or Joel straight up forgot how to survive. Wow. When the entire point of naturalism is to explore the gray area in between. I'm not here to tell people their interpretations are wrong, but to act as if you're making some objective discovery, or guys, that's not how writing works, bro, is ignorant. No, Joel didn't quote unquote forget how to survive, and yes, he did have a reason for letting his guard down. Why? Well, stay with me. To start, this franchise is about what it means to be human. Throughout the entirety of the first game, you see absolute cold-blooded, emotionless husks actively suppressing their humanity and empathy. Why? Because the moment someone opens themselves up to actually care, people die.
She did hold her own back there.
You ain't gonna make it.
Look, Bill, about your buddy back there, that's a tough deal. And
We square.
we're square.
Then get the fuck out of my town.
Throughout his bonding with Ellie, Joel gradually reconnects with what makes him human, and by the end, chooses Ellie over a vaccine that could have saved the world, and also reconnects with his brother. He finds an actual purpose worth living for, not just Ellie, but something within himself, a sense of goodness. Whereas before, he had nothing. His newfound sense of community hasn't made him bad at fighting, like what are we, power scalers now? No, Joel obviously knows how to survive, but it's his selflessness that makes him choose to save Abby when she's alone and do good that gets him killed. If you think about it too, Abby kind of plays 4D chess and gives Joel and Tommy a false sense of security. And Joel walking to the center of the room, it's like, closer look really said to give subtext with Tommy saying, damn Joel, you're slower than before. Like, bro, listen, I respect anyone who gets views. All right, seriously. Communicating your message is all that matters in the end. And I do think Closer Look has a lot of writing knowledge, but only in the way a creative writing teacher would. Being clear, I believe in subjectivity and that everyone is going to enjoy what they enjoy for their reasons. But we can still reason as to how much insight someone actually has in a medium. And while he does know a lot of terms, I don't think he has the ability to analyze artistry on a deep level. Of course, he's going to talk about subtext with the most hated MCU movie of the last 10 years. Or, I'll tell you what, guys, I don't really think the magic in Doctor Strange 2 makes sense, bro. I really don't, man. Or, yo, guys, I don't think Joker 2 is a good musical, bro. Again, kind of just a more knowledgeable version of a consistency merchant. In his video, he also says,
Tommy begins the story by saying, "No, revenge is bad, Ellie. You have a good life here. Don't ruin it by seeking revenge." And then he ends the story by saying, "Yes, revenge is good, Ellie. You have a good life here, but you should ruin it by going for revenge." And on top of that, Tommy actually has no character arc presented to explain why he's changed his opinions, so it makes no sense.
Which I think is pretty obvious if you had a better eye for subtext, that Tommy only said that to keep Ellie safe while he went out for revenge. And if you think about it, that's a huge red flag, because someone saying something almost never directly shows their true beliefs, because there are almost always barriers keeping them from spelling out their honest truth. Again, the reason it's different when I'm talking about fucking animes, or I guess simple ass stories, is because actual verisimilitude convinces you that the writers don't exist and that these beings act on their own free will. When you have great naturalism, it's a lot hard to pull the trigger on inconsistent writing because of how multifaceted the character now is. Like seriously, oh my god guys, why did Ellie not kill Abby when she saw her husk body hanging from a pole? That's bad writing, bro. Or holy crap, how does Abby kill a bunch of guys and then not Dina? That's character assassination, bro. Like, you realize humans in real life are more complicated than anime bots, right? Guys, Joel in the first game rejects his daughter's picture and then also wears her watch? What fucking bad writing, bro. And for the record, I don't even pull the consistency trigger that much on these shallow ass stories. If you really want to say, no dude, Mark getting his planet threatened and then still having his top priorities as his school and girlfriend makes sense, bro. That's not bad writing. Fine. I'm obviously going to bring up stuff that bother me, but my main problem is always going to be that these characters are one-dimensional robots. One Punch Man is perfect in terms of consistency probably, but my issue is that the writing comes across as the fakest, most bland shit ever. It's obvious that people just didn't want to see Joel die. Spoilers for Breaking Bad and BBC, sorry BBS. Mike's death doesn't get the same scrutiny despite Mike being Master Chief in real life. He doesn't see Walter walking towards him with a gun, instead he's opening his bag of money after turning on his car, and he dies. And I don't have any problems with it, because Mike is a fucking human being. But if you applied Joel logic, then yeah, you would find things to nitpick. But you don't, because Mike didn't die to a strong independent woman, dude! If you're Andy Pants gaming mentality, bro, go play Call of Duty in real life. Go die for oil, bro. Now listen, Closer Look obviously didn't enjoy the game, and that's fine, but his focus on trying to attach his feelings to quote-unquote writing principles is where I fundamentally do not align with him. Like when he talked about plot structure.
And then we have a second climax, and then it goes down when the story ends. What you're seeing on screen is an abomination of story structure.
Even though I see so many of the same formulas in writing and techniques being used in varying degrees of quality, acting like there's all these strict rules and principles to storytelling takes away from its inherent artistic nature. Zone of Interest, which I think is one of the best movies of the decade, doesn't really have a rising tension build-up leading up to a climax because it shouldn't. And dude, like, you're just making it too easy for edits too cool for school break the rules, dude. Like, Last of Us 2 very clearly made an artistic choice in rewinding time, which has its own benefits as opposed to just doing a linear timeline. He's so against Last of Us 2's existence that he rewrote the story, you know, I gotta respect it. But what I think is fucking lame is this.
What kind of creator actively chooses to disappoint their fans? And I know what some of you might be thinking, but it's not a question of creative liberty, because I hate to say it, but when you make a sequel, you just can't have as much liberty as you did when you made that first story, because that first story set a precedent, and it's one that you have to stick to. Otherwise, you'll stray too far from what made people like the first one.
Why would you ever blame the guy who wrote both games acting like he's supposed to subject himself to pleasing others? See, what people wanted from Last of Us 2 was basically the flashbacks, because the first game ended on a cliffhanger. They wanted another Joel and Ellie adventure where they get over the distrust literally dealing with Ellie's existence. I mean, I'm not gonna say this hypothetical story would have been good or bad because it comes down to execution, but I really don't see how you guys would have gotten that Joel and Ellie adventure you wanted, because Last of Us 1's ending is not something you come back from.
It ended on a downer, and I think the writers just painted themselves into a corner. I mean, there's nowhere to go from here but down, all right? You break trust with somebody that you love, somebody you're in a relationship with, and that's what Joel did. You lie, and I know why he did what he did. He was thinking it was for the best, but he misjudged it. He misread Ellie. He doesn't understand. He misunderstood her.
And I think the direction they went in, with Joel dying not like a hero, not sacrificing himself for 5 guys, just dying like that, was a perfect fit for Ellie's character, not just in Last of Us 2, but also Last of Us 1. Throughout her entire life, she's convinced herself that her entire purpose is the fact that she's immune. And when Joel takes it away from her and lies to her about it, obviously trying to protect her from herself, it's inevitable that these characters were going to drift apart. So when you combine this conflict with the fact that Joel is gone, it forces you to reflect and ponder on every memory associated with him. One of the initial and most potent emotions Ellie experiences is the regret of resenting him for so long, especially when they were just starting to reconnect. But she doesn't want to think about that. Her focus is on the injustice of it all. She goes out for revenge, killing so many people, including a pregnant woman, and even after being blessed with the perfect life, she just continues until finally finding Abby, who is now a weathered and beaten husk, who only wants the best for a little kid. Experiencing PTSD, seeing the broken state Tommy was in, she so desperately wants to believe that killing Abby will bring her some sort of peace or resolution, which is why she still fights her, but deep down knows it doesn't mean anything. The ending, in which you can interpret as Ellie losing everything, I would interpret it as Ellie finally letting go of not only Joel, but the Firefly incident and her entire conflict with being immune. She knows what Joel did wasn't heroic, he fucking massacred a hospital, but he did it so she could finally have the right to define her life. After so long of running from herself, basically, she finally gains a sense of lucidity. Now we also have to talk about the other side of the story with Abby. Abby is kind of like a reflection of Joel, to where she's cold-blooded and she doesn't give a shit about anything. She lost her dad, so she starts the game like Ellie later on, consumed by revenge. But like Joel, eventually develops a sense of selflessness for these kids who saved her. Maybe also influenced by Owen's exhaustion of killing people for nothing. Abby's side of the story, I would say, is weaker. It's very easy to compare it to the more developed Last of Us 1. But at the same time, the micro-dick writing is still of high quality, and I don't even think they play up the sympathy angle at all. Never once playing as Abby did I feel like I was rooting for her, because she's still very flawed. But I guess it's the fact that she's doing a selfless act in contrast to Ellie being consumed by revenge that made me happily beat her up. I also thought it was a really cool, fun, and unique idea. You know, not to dog on Closer Look, but he brought up how, look at all these streamers killing themselves as Abby. Which, if that's just not the most ultra casual shit ever, no, you killed Joel! The biggest problem with Abby's story is that she doesn't get the amazing character moments that Joel or Ellie do throughout both games. She struggles with her killing nature, which is communicated to us by her smashing the chair. Like, that's not top of the line stuff. Also, having a dream about the kids is pretty goofy. I mean, it makes sense, but there could have been more effort to make it more compelling. I feel like there's a lot of areas that they just left unexplored with Abby, but she's still a high quality character. As a human, I was happy for her when she got a call back from the Fireflies. Overall, I don't think it's supposed to be a sympathy flip. I think it's supposed to show that each person in this universe has their own story. When Abby spares Ellie because Dina's pregnant, to her, fuck Ellie, but that one selfless act goes so far in that Ellie and Dina go on to have their dream life on a farm. To be clear though, that's my interpretation and the meaning I drew from the game. If I have to tell you that I'm aware you're allowed to have your own opinion, you gotta be fucking brain dead. But to act like Last of Us 2 is some objective writing disaster when you can clearly see that this game took more talent, effort, and skill to write than most other shit out there, you're in denial. It's bold and therefore easier to find problems with, but I don't feel like that's a bad thing. Last of Us 1, while having great characters and micro writing on par with Last of Us 2, I would say had a pretty generic, formulaic story. I never felt like the characters were taken into super interesting, dynamic places other than maybe the ending, but that's more of a tease. Last of Us 2, to me, is the payoff where it directly attacks the core of these characters and what they really mean to each other. It definitely took more risks, and it resulted in it being a lot more moving. So getting into more of the people's problems, I feel like it's important to note that in such an emotionally unstable community, it's like every week I'm seeing a new main reason as to why the story is bad. Just recently I saw this comment saying, yeah, this game sucks because we accomplished nothing in it. Which is like, you know, I'm sitting here trying to think of what to say. I'll get back to you. Something else people don't like are the side characters on both sides. Like, yeah, I knew they would die. That's not shocking. Like, are you talking about the first game or the second game? I think when it comes to writing, it's pretty impressive how well developed and real everyone feels. Especially in comparison to the rest of this stupid ass video game medium. Like, what do you guys want? Halo Infinite? No. It's not, no. Also, don't even with the nakey janky shit. That's not a discussion about writing, it's about game design, but even in the first game, I thought Joel murdering the hospital was a pretty clear indication that the characters of this universe act on their volition. If you want to play Metal Gear 3, go do that.
Is that how they do it in the KGB?
Sometimes. Would you rather I did it American style?
You know, I also remember a Reddit comment about how Ellie had a no-kill rule but only applying it to Abby. I don't know, man. I'm fucking quitting after this for sure. The more interesting point being brought up with this is, oh my God, Ellie kills a lot of people and then not Abby because she realized she lost herself. But Abby also kills a lot of people off of a selfless motivation. I would say I'm surprised this conversation is being brought up with The Last of Us 2, but you know, we all know why. Red Dead 2, Arthur, good guy redemption, but also kills a lot of guys like nothing. Nathan Drake, like I don't think he's supposed to be a mass murderer. Firstly, I think it's kind of goofy to be bothered by it, but also I feel like people underestimate getting fucking shot at. Self-defense doesn't have to be some moral dilemma, like it's either you fucking die or not die. When it comes to Abby shooting former teammates, self-defense, but also it's not like they were ever her loved ones. Her story is about being tired of killing for nothing in the way that Isaac's people would. I just wish the game explored that more, like why was Abby with Isaac to begin with? A better point brought up is the whole game starting because of a pack of people traveling a bunch of miles for a rumor brought by Donkey. And I went into this game expecting to be put off by it, but I think when I saw the size of Isaac's operation in the whole ass stadium, Abby bringing her friends who also personally were affected by Joel and who wouldn't want to miss it, they probably take up like what, at most 5% of Isaac's operation. I bought it enough to not be bothered by it, but if you are, again, that's fine. Something that I actually was bothered by though, the scars. When it comes to making a faction devoted to a fictional religion, you can do it amazingly like Halo, or lazily, where a bunch of people worship a random girl for some reason. Like, people in real life believe in religions because they have Bibles and long-running churches. And I know there's weird cults, but this many people? If it's realistic, fine, but they don't explore the concept of following a religion other than just following the religion. Like Kinds of Kindness. Oh my God, guys, look at this guy worshiping commentary, bro. Like, are they mentally handicapped or what? Either explore the why of the religion like Galo or don't do it. It would have been cool to see what a dynamic between factions looks like in The Last of Us other than, all right, we're gonna invade you. This underdeveloped religious aspect also results in the kids having pretty corny dialogue, which by itself isn't a bad thing, but because the writers of The Last of Us believe somebody would believe or take this religion seriously, some of Abby's moments come off as unnatural to me.
I can't. You're going to. Come on, true strength. True strength. True strength.
Like if somebody told me truth strength, I'd be like, shut the fuck up, Malteser head. Mel is weird as fuck, like why going to shoot people while pregnant while being traumatized about killing people. The 3-day time frame, while conceptually very creative, does limit the scope of the narrative with some stagnation at points. But overall, Last of Us 2 does have a pretty well-developed story, which is kind of a one-of-a-kind. In most stories, good or bad, the character usually dies at the end, completing whatever they set out to do. But I love the fact that here, the main character who was developed in the last game dies early, and this story is about loss. Last of Us 2 is also a very realistic stealth shooter with very open-ended levels and areas to explore. The gameplay feels real enough to keep you immersed in the story like the first game. Being able to almost live in the story in a way that you can't with film, I think is what makes the experience so much more impactful. It was so much better than the first time I played it, and I'm glad everyone who worked on this game chose the artistic route. So thank you.